About a child. They were in a classroom, and the teacher gave them an assignment to write a narrative, just to write a short story. And this young boy, 9 years old, his name is Johnny. So he writes this story, and he wrote about Jonah. And so he writes his story, and he kind of spells it out, the way he remembered it was told. And he really believed in that. So after school, after class, the teacher pulled him aside and says, Johnny, that's not true that a fish can't swallow a man. And Johnny kind of held steadfast. He said, no, this is true. This is history. It really happened. She said, I'm sorry, a man could not live inside of a fish for 3 days. Even though structurally your story was good, but there was a false thing. I wanted something from your practical experience. He said, no, this is true. This is true. She said, Johnny, no, that did not happen. So Johnny said, it did happen, and I know that it happened. And when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask Jonah, and he'll tell me that the story was true. And the teacher said, but what if he's not in heaven? What if he went to that other place? And Johnny thought for a minute. He said, well, you ask him.
Hello, everyone. My name is Margot Shoemaker, for those of you who don't know me. I want to introduce our guest speaker today. I am the co-chair of the Social Justice Committee with Pat Burke, and together we participate with Voice Buffalo, which is an organization that works on social justice issues throughout this community. Our guest speaker today is Pastor James Giles, who is the president of Voice Buffalo. He has for many years worked tirelessly to address problems affecting people in Buffalo, including gang intervention, re-entry support, addiction, anti-violence initiatives, youth mentoring, and individual and family counseling. He is incredible. His work led to the birth of the Stop the Violence Coalition, the Buffalo Peacemakers, and SNUG, a group that's the initials stand for Should Never Use Guns. Peacemakers are men and women volunteers dressed in bright yellow t-shirts who you may have seen on the street corners in the city. They work with law enforcement and youth to provide safe passage in the city at public events and near neighborhood schools. Reverend Giles became president of Voice Buffalo in 2013, and under his leadership, Voice has worked on many social justice issues concerning people with disabilities, refugees, and a LEAD program in Buffalo and Erie County that stands for Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion. He's going to speak today, and I'm sure you'll be motivated. And our plate today will be donated to Voice Buffalo. So please be generous. Thank you. Reverend Giles? And he will introduce his co-person.
Thank you again, Margot. I appreciate that. This is Minister Jamaica Washington. He's a member of my church, Greater Works Deliverance Fellowship, who one of my elders is doing the service today, so I could be here with this lovely lady here. I didn't know you were a singer. Yes. And you sing opera, too? So you know Kristen Gregory? Mm-hmm. Huh? Yeah, she's a good friend of mine, so good. Yes, so great. I am very happy to be here, and I just want to talk a little bit about a couple things that has brought me to the movement. I have a background, where, I made bad choices when I was younger and found myself in prison and found myself doing things that caused my mother many, many, many knee sores. Yes, trying to get me up out of that. And however, God finally got my attention and decided that, listen, with what it is that you know and what you know how to do, you're on the wrong side. You're in the wrong race. I need you on this side. And he captured my heart, my mind, my spirit, my body. And I just dedicated myself to helping people. And when I immerse myself in that arena, I find out, that everyone has value. And the trouble with our world and our country today is that we have people that are in charge sometimes that don't want to lend value to people that they're, in my mind, is the Creator's intention that everyone would be born equal. And what that means is that you're born equal and you should have equal opportunity and you should have a right to life and a right to live. No matter what it is the choices are, and no matter what it is or who you decide you want to worship or who you decide you want to praise and who you want to give credit for your being, you have a right to express that. And it's about creating, when we talk about God's beloved community, it's really about creating that environment, creating that space where everyone is worth something and has value. And so I set out on a mission. I graduated from Medaille College, but I spent a lot of time, a few years at Buffalo State University, where I learned about urban culture, urban development, African American history, Pan-Africanism, all of that, to discover that we African Americans in this country have been just dastardly treated as a human being and denied their right to be a human being. And so it explains sociologically, why, some of us are, we make bad choices and we find ourselves desperate and in desperate circumstances to elevate ourselves. And so, but that was created. That wasn't, no one was born like that. That was created. So it's incumbent upon community. It's incumbent upon life. It's incumbent upon the citizens of a great community. And we only as great as the least of our members of our community, to do something, to not sit quietly by. And so historically, beginning with the Boston Tea Party, Americans, the colonists, were unhappy because they were mistreated and they were taxation without representation. And so then they decided to stand up against that type of tyranny where a government can say, listen, we can do anything we want with you and we still want you to pay us and we still want you to contribute to our well-being, and we have nobody to be accountable for. And the Boston Tea Party kind of set the stage for what rebellion looks like here in America. But it also set the stage for the Declaration of Independence, where the framers of such documents said, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They said that, they wrote that, but they did not believe that, and they did not practice such a thing. Not only for Africans that were over in this country unjustly, but also for poor white Americans and poor women. They were not included. As a matter of fact, if you didn't have wealth, you were also not included. And to think that this country was built upon that. So now it's incumbent upon the citizens, because just like they rallied and they fought against and they rebelled against what they call tyranny, against that letter of Declaration of Independence was sent to King George. Said, we're not having it anymore. So now this is where the position that we are in today's country. We're not having it anymore. It's incumbent upon us that just because I have the abilities to make it, just because I have the strength to resolve, and just because I have the wherewithal to increase and elevate, does not mean I am not responsible for those that doesn't. That I should not help them. That I should not do everything in my power to bring them justice. And that's what Voice Buffalo is about. It's about looking at the least of the community and those that are underappreciated and marginalized and treated unfairly because of their racial being, their racial makeup, their ethnicity, or their abilities, or their persuasion, or whatever belief they choose to have. And people, or because their decision, their gender, and their decision to choose a gender, they're mistreated and oftentimes cast aside. Well, that's not the type of country we really want to be a part of. We didn't sign in for that. We signed up to be a country where liberty would be the reigning cry of all of its citizens. And to be truly free is to be permitted and allowed to be what you want to be, as long as it did not hurt or harm someone. And so when I voiced Buffalo, when they asked me to be president, I said, yeah, because I've been doing this work. I've been trying to bring equity to my community for some time now. I started counseling, right? Because I thought drug addiction was a policy and a plan to subvert a community. And what better way to do that than to keep everybody high? To take their mind off the pain that they face, that they rise up and face every day. And I wanted to help solve the drug problem that was in my personal neighborhood. But then as I started working on that, I discovered how dysfunctional families were in my community. And I felt a fire. I wanted to do something. God had positioned me to be in a space that I and what I brought to the table could help them. And I very dedicatedly helped families. I helped women who were by themselves and because their husband was strung out on drugs and in and out of prison, much like I was 20 years and 25 years earlier. And I thought, and I helped them bring some space, bring this individual and showed them how to welcome this individual back to the community, back to the family. And I showed those women how to empower that individual and not hold his legacy, hold him hostage to the legacy, bad as it was, that he had created, so that the children could benefit. And then I found out the children were so mad, so angry, not only at their family environment, not only at their circumstances, but they were angry at the systems that were in control of them. They were angry at public schools because they did not bring adequate resources to them when they had challenges and barriers to learning. They did not utilize the resources that was available to them in a very prominent way. And because of that, they start dropping out of school because teachers couldn't understand them, and they hurry up and suspended them out of school. And they would suspend them out of school and not send home any books so that they can study, and not make sure that they were studying while they were off. And so the child will come back to school, and now you're going to press him to catch up with what he couldn't keep up with. And so he would drop out. And slowly they begin to hang out in corners and hang out in their neighborhoods, and they became street gangs. And I told them 15 years ago, if you don't stop the suspension, listen, we're going to have a tragedy. We're going to have an increase in the gang population. And they did not listen to me when I was trying to talk to the administrator, right? So as a result, in 1994, 1995, Buffalo had 32 gangs, and by 2018, they had 118 gangs. And who were made up these gangs? These were children, kids, misguided, fed up with school, fed up with the system, and found families in the street. And they did not know that they were going to be the new fodder for a prison system. And when they talk about the pipeline from school to prison, no more prevalent is it than in inner cities because of this suspension thing. And I wanted to stop that. And we organized and we talked about restorative justice, and we challenged them to kind of create a code of conduct for children, a code of conduct for how the programs and services that schools ought to offer students, and students ought to be the first and prominent members of that community. And they brought it in and they twisted it so that it was not effective. And they wouldn't do restorative justice. And we are trying to empower communities just like yourselves to be part of this restorative model. And what restorative justice is, and sometimes, and the school is trying to roll it out as some kind of program to fix kids. It is not a program to fix kids. It's a program to change cultures, to change community so children can thrive. It's designed to do that. So teachers need to understand what the restorative model is. It's a philosophy where I develop a language to recognize when someone is disruptive, how to resolve that, as opposed to punishing them. How to restore that individual back to the community. There's a group, the San, they're called the San, or the Bushmen of the Kalahari. They have been doing circles, peace circles, for over 5,000 years. And they have no history whatsoever of war, of fighting. Because it's almost a religion for them that if I have an issue with my brother or my sister, it's a religion for them. We must work that out in a restorative way for the well-being of the community at large. And it's so now, so we're working very hard to bring those systems in places to even faith communities, to the criminal justice system. We're talking to the judge and saying, listen, hey, this young man is before you, man, but he's 17. Do you really want to give this kid 15 years for a robbery? He can't, his brain is not even complete, but he has no idea what he's doing. I know that personally because I happen to be a counselor and I counsel some of them. They have no idea the effect or the consequences or the impact of what it is that they're doing. Do you want to sentence this child as an adult? Yeah, so we fought. We fought for raise the age. We didn't want children alongside of men, and I've been in there with them. Some of them are terror and intimidating to a child, and childs get broken, right, and their lives get corrupted, and their lives get twisted because of that prison experience, and they wanted to tell us that prison will rehabilitate. No, it doesn't. It's another punitive system designed to make matters worse. And so I say, as Voice Buffalo and the things that we've done, I wanted to challenge the violent child. I wanted to get up in their lives and create programs and develop mentors and work with brothers that were coming home from prison that would be credible messengers. I said, hey, listen, you guys did your thing. It was like me. I did my thing. Listen, but we're responsible for some of that. We got to go back and fix that. And they joined me. And they began to speak into the lives of children that were being disruptive. And children that were being violent and young boys that were carrying guns. They began to speak into their lives and they decided to put them down because we helped marshal them into new avenues where they could thrive. And that's what the Peacemakers do. And that's what SNUG, it's an anti-violence group, do. And they work with young men that are carrying weapons that do not realize the impact. I understood this deeply when I found out there was a young man that shot a guy on Bailey Avenue right outside of a restaurant. He's waiting on him to come out. And as soon as he come out, he shoots the man, and then he falls on the ground and he shoots him in the head and see his brains, and then he throws up and drops the gun. He have no idea the impact of what it is that they're doing. So somebody got to help them, right? Yeah, we have to have some punishment. You know, there are some consequences to bad behavior. But yes, but it's more incumbent and it's more prudent for us to see how we can fix that and bring that individual to a space that they may be productive citizens. That's what we want to do. And that's what the social justice, we want to allow, you can, listen, we fought for access for the disabled. We fought for that community. They had been working on this for years, trying to get access, trying to get a local facility that was in reach, not the one that's out in West Seneca where they had to wait, they had to walk 3 miles. And some days they had to wait on a transfer bus right in the snow. You know how cold it is in South Buffalo at Southgate Plaza in the wintertime. And here it is, a young man is in a wheelchair, kind of wait on a pickup. No, we needed an office downtown. We needed an office that was more, for 80% of the individuals that participated in that office out there were citizens out of the city of Buffalo. We needed a place where they can go and get services. And they would not listen to them. But as Voice Buffalo, we rallied around that effort. Yeah, I was picking up the phone, calling everybody I knew in the governor's office. And fortunately, Kathy Hochul, I used to work with her husband, Bill Hochul, when he was the U.S. attorney, the district attorney here. And so we got answers, and they brought it to being. So now they have an office down on Broadway. This was a huge accomplishment. And I said, just because these individuals are walking around and we consider them disabled, but Mike Rogers is a young man. I said, I would have Mike as my vice president in any organization I am. They're smart, they're articulate. Stop being prejudiced toward them because of their condition, because of who they. You never know who you're trying to deny opportunity to. You don't know their story. And it's unfair for us as a population to look the other way. Because here's what happened. And this happened to my Christian community. People of faith, that the 235 years when slaves were being tortured, abused, and women were being stripped and abused, and men were being hung on trees and beat in public square. 200 years, they looked the other way. The colonists looked the other way, and they professed a belief in God. And they stood by and watched the atrocities and the tragedy to a people that were treated less than they treated animals. Yeah, that burned me. Yeah, that bothers me. And I don't believe today, and I'm glad I'm at this church, right? Because you're about inclusion, right? And you're about acceptance. And you're about creating that space where everyone has a voice, where everyone has a sense of being. And that's what this is about. But it can't stop just here. This got to be for the city of Buffalo. If we want the city of Buffalo to really be a good neighbor, right? The city of good neighbors. If we really want that, then we have to really be good neighbors. Let me end with this story. Jesus Christ was asked, he said, He said, Master, how do we have everlasting life? He said, well, just to love God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and that you would love your neighbors as you love yourself. He said, I place this like the first one. As you say you love God, I place this just like it, that you love your neighbor. They said, well, who is my neighbor? And he told them a story about a Jewish man that was walking to Jericho. And on the road, he got mugged, got beat up, got robbed, beat him, and they left him there to die. And the story said that a priest came by and looked at the man and saw over there and then said, let me cross the street, right? Because of fear that he might be a victim. And he kept walking. And then a Levite came by. Somebody that knows something about the temple came by and saw him right and looked at him right and said, listen, I must go out and let me move before they come and get me. And he kept walking. And then a Samaritan. Now, Samaritans were outcasts in the Hebrew land. A Samaritan comes by, somebody that was already mistreated, somebody already discriminated, comes by and sees him, and he goes and attends to the man. He attends to him, picks him up, carries him to an inn, and pays for the innkeeper to not only attend to him and keep him, but he says, whatever he needs when he gets well, put it to my account when I be back here. And Jesus looked at them and says, which one of those was his neighbor? And they said, why, the Samaritan. He said, well, you go and do the same. And that's incumbent upon all of us. That's how we have those that are downtrodden, those that are beat, those are berated, where the populace want to cast them and categorize them and say they're not worthy of life, worthy of living, and they do everything they can to keep them from opportunities. It should make us upset. And that's what Voice Buffalo is about, is helping others to develop their voice so that they can cry loud and spare not. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Katie, and I am a health promotion major at Damon College, and I'm feeling very moved towards the social justice, fighting against inequality and the social determinants of health. And I was wondering if your organization had anything for someone like me to maybe volunteer or, find a job in, anything with health or anything like that.
So absolutely, Katie. There's a couple of areas that we are recruiting at. One is because we want to do the census. So we're looking for people to do census work so that everyone is counted, right? And that has a lot to do with resources for, particularly in inner city spaces. And the other thing is that we are working with the immigrant population. Mental health is one of their deep concerns. And so we want to make sure that they have access. One of the things that we're doing with the mental health community, and I need people on this team, is that I believe like people like Clyde and Horizon and all those mental health spaces, right, need to have more outreach services. We have one of the highest homeless areas in the state, and a lot of them are being diagnosed with mental health. Currently, the Erie County Department of Corrections, right, the holding center, has become the asylum for the insane, and I'm just being candid when I say that, but a lot of individuals that are going through that system, right, have mental health issues. And in my mind, it's because of a failure to provide navigators to do outreach services for our community. And we need to really rally and organize around that, and we are.
I really found your speech very interesting. I was a teacher for many years, and I'm curious to know what the schools in Buffalo are doing now in regard to suspension. You mentioned that. Have they changed their tune?
They've changed the language around that, and they have instituted some policies that happen to be ineffective. I remember I had a meeting with Kreiner Cash, and he was saying, listen, we're doing restorative justice. I said, really? I said, okay. But at that same time, during that same month, this was last year, 2019 in January, East High School had 50 suspensions, right, during that same period that I was having that conversation. So they're not really doing the restorative model the way we have ushered it in. It's really to kind of create an environment where suspension should be the last thing that you do. I understand in some cases, right, a child does something heinous. Yeah, I get that. You want to suspend them, but even that individual deserves this restorative model. Let's work with this individual, find out what's promoting them, what's provoking them to do such a thing, and let's heal this individual and bring them back into the community.
So what they're doing is incomplete.
It's incomplete, absolutely right, you're right. They're just kind of band-aiding stuff, right? Our children America is, of all the civilized countries around this planet, America invests the least in the development of their children, right? The least, right? So, and it's evident academically. At one time, when I was coming up as a child, we were #1 academically over the world. We are now 19th.
Isolation leads to negative things.
Yes.
And I'm sorry to hear that things haven't been resolved completely.
Yes.
Keep
it's
up
sad.
your good work.
Yeah, thank you. There are some schools really doing it. A few of our suburban schools, because we have some amazing teachers. They're coming out wanting to do things. Just another note to that. They're coming out really realizing what needs to be done, and then the system, particularly in the Buffalo Public Schools, are tying their hands from doing it. Right?
Thank you.
Giles, can you tell us about your relationship with our DA, John Flynn, and if it's helpful?
Yes. So John Flynn, we actually organized when they were running for office, John Flynn and Haggerty and the others that were running for the district attorney's office. And where we challenged him at our public meeting was, will you sponsor a comprehensive diversion program for Erie County? Will you do that? And he said yes. He stood the mic, just like Michelle has the mic. He said, Mike, yes, I will do that. And he actually did that. He actually set the table for the LEADS program, and that's what we wanted, the Law Enforcement Assistant Diversion Program. And for those that don't know what that is, it's where an officer has the latitude, in a pilot way, has the latitude to, instead of arresting an individual young person, this is the third time you caught him drinking in front of a store, the third time you caught him with marijuana in his pocket, or he just stole something from a local store. The officer has the latitude, as opposed to arresting this individual, to send them to a program such as mine, right, to develop a tracking system for him and hold this individual accountable, restore them, find out why he's stealing, find out why he's drinking, find out why he's doing that, and kind of work with the family, kind of put him back together, right? And that way the child never gets a record, never gets arrested if they do what it is prescribed by that particular program that's servicing them. Right, John did that, he marshaled that in, but the linchpin here is law enforcement, getting them to go full bore, but we're very close to that happening.
many years, we had participated in a program here at this church called Alternatives to Incarceration. It was young people, young kids who had been arrested and convicted of nonviolent crimes, and we were one of the organizations that accepted them to come and have a place to do their term without having to go to prison, and there was some mentoring that happened as well. I'm wondering if, and that program ended after several years, is there any program like that which is being done right now?
Yeah, they're still doing it in a very widespread way. They have a youth court now, and so, I mean, I have individuals doing community service, young people doing community services in my program, and yeah, so it's still ongoing, not to the degree that it should be, and they're trying to correct that. Bill reform has got everybody kind of raising their head and just crazy because they don't know what to do. Some people are, it's creating some dialogue that maybe we shouldn't do this, but bill reform is letting people out, hoping that they get involved in something positive so that they don't have to go back to jail. Yes, but yes, they are still doing alternative to incarceration. It's called a diversion programs, right?
Thank you, and let's express our appreciation again, shall we?